right, coming up next, we have a panel discussion on the topic SaaS versus PaaS versus IaaS in data management. Now, our panel discussion will be about benefits and drawbacks of each, and I would like to call upon our panelists on stage now. Can I please have Manohar Kosuru, who is the director at Vertafore India Private Limited, Mohamed Yaseen, director and founder of Ysqaure Technology, Nilesh Kumar from KONZE India Private Limited, and our moderator, Shahin Hojabrian, who is the Senior Technology Officer at Sabah General Electric. Can we please have a round of applause for our panelists? Thank you very much.
To introduce ourselves and the experiences we had one by one, and we'll try to go through 4 different parts in our conversation, focusing on implementations that we have had or in this area, talking about data ownership, talking about industry concerns, and then if we have time, we might talk about the promises in the future that could be in terms of employment, in terms of the technology itself. So if you can start by introducing yourself, sir.
Hi everyone, my name is Manohar. I represent Vertafore India. I currently head shared services delivery for the organization from India standpoint. In my current role, I take care of both AWS Cloud and also DevOps as an organization practice and maturity. I've been here in the IT industry for almost 2 decades. Happy to share some perspectives on what do I see on a day-to-day basis and whatever I learned. Thank you.
Myself, Yaseen. I'm a technology solution architect. I've been working for companies like Ford and GE for the last 13 years, and then I had started my own team where we try to bring in enterprise level solution architecture quality to startup community where they lack the engineering aspects, whatever is there available for the enterprise level system. So we kind of bring in right from a product problem to solutionizing, and then to engineering, and then to take it to market. So happy to share some perspectives on this topic. Thanks.
Myself, Nilesh Kumar. I'm working as a CTO of KONZE India Private Limited, and yes, from 20 years of this particular professional experience, I have learned that yes, SaaS is the market. So let's discuss today about it. Other than that, I always love sports and promote sports to be healthy. That's it from my side. Please.
Amazing. And I'm Shahin, and Shahin Hojabrian. I'm from Kuwait, coming here. Mainly I help businesses find the right solution or develop the right solution for their businesses. And here I'm on behalf of one of those businesses, Sabah General Electric. It's an old company in Kuwait. And so mostly I'm gonna be asking our friends here about the experiences they had. We know when we talk about SaaS and PaaS, and there has been a kind of a history to it. And our friends here has been in that process for a long time. So starting from you, how did you experience it the past, say, 5 or 10 years? How did it develop? I know it developed starting from SaaS, but then it went on, right?
Yeah. As we all know that infrastructure, then platform, then software right now. So current industry is basically software as a service. How we can define it in a way? See, currently we have a product called KONZE, and we are providing CRM software, and this is for B2B as well as B2C also. So SaaS kind of product will serve as a whole market, we can say. But the thing is, what kind of difficulties are there? What kind of challenges are there? As per our discussion earlier also, that we are facing some issues in database, in performance, and in some kind of security also. But yes, it is evolving very fast, I can say. And it will help us a lot in the near future. So yes.
So it's evolving fast. That's
true,
what
true.
you believe.
100%.
All right. Now, I had a conversation with you earlier, and you said you were helping the businesses to get a break, think before they start developing something, and you have had a couple of successes in that with the businesses. So how do you see it evolving, and how do you recommend it evolving, or in your practice?
Right. So initially, like when like this market is very huge, like public cloud services, like in the last recent report, it is like $482 billion market, and out of that, SaaS is around $180 billion market. And like now, with this craze going on, like every startup, they are focused on getting into a state where they want to think SaaS right from the beginning. They want to just start SaaS right from the beginning. And now what we advise them, or what we tell them during the engineering process is like, let's go step by step. We make sure that it is problem first, and then we take solution next, and then do the engineering next, and then take it to scale. So people like when they have the capability of taking it to a SaaS level of scale, right? So they need to factor that engineering in the initial stage itself in terms of data, especially in the data side. They need to like understand like how do they play the role of a like whether it's a how do they manage the consumer data, how do they manage the customer data, how do they manage the provider's data, what level of accesses they have, and how do they store the data is also very, very crucial. Like whether it is going to be on the partition level, or on the schema level, or on the database level, or on the service level, it's going to be very crucial. So we kind of take that privilege to just make sure that they are thinking about all this in the initial stages itself when they want to do scale. So that gives them a perspective when where they'll land in the next 2 years or 4 years or 5 years.
So what you're saying is people start going to SaaS first right now. Now, I remember it wasn't used to be like that. Like even an accounting program that you'd be talking about, people preferred buying it as a product before than say going into a SaaS service provider. Now it's the opposite. And right?
We had a use case like that. Like we were building an ERP kind of a system for a trucking company, and it eventually the product finally became a SaaS kind of a platform for other similar logistics and trucking companies to use. So that's how people think in the later version when they start building now.
Yes. Now, how did you see it? I know that you have produced some products actually.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, the question what you asked in terms of the tenure, right? Let's say the last decade, how did it evolve? I probably see 2-3 different perspectives, or my answer would be circling around 2-3 different areas. One, it is the acceptability from different domains and industries that basically led what kind of a model, the service delivery model in that space that you will pick up. Because if you look at banking as an industry, probably tried to shy away for quite some time, considering the data privacy part of it, and or they prefer to have more of only infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service than software as a service. Or maybe sometimes the other way around, because they wanted to retain in their own space all the data and everything. They don't want to share anything out. And that's where probably it kind of led them to go into the private cloud kind of a model as well. The other side of it is the domain part of it, right? So there are several domains, like let's take, for example, oil and natural gas, or kind of energy sectors. So there's a lot of data that's get generated where there's questions related to the security part of it, and also not so much related to the really worried about the security, but it's more about the scale of the data that they are worried about. So in those kind of scenarios, it is not more about whether it is a SaaS or whether it is a platform, but it's more about the scalability of the infrastructure. That is what they are worried about. So they were not worried much about what delivery model that you consume, rather than how much of an integration that I can do with various other systems. For example, somebody running an oil rig in Pacific, right? So the robots are basically doing the integration of the pipes, and you're basically trying to predict the amount of oil that's going to be generated on an hourly basis. So it's not about what data is coming in there, or how I'm going to consume, or what delivery model that I have, but it's more about what kind of a systems that it will give me an opportunity to integrate. So I can give a projection to the market in terms of how much of a revenue that I'm going to generate from the amount of oil that I'm going to find, or that I'm going to be able to produce as such in a specified time period of thing. The third aspect is more from a perspective of, the security and the regulations standpoint. When you come to the security and regulation standpoint, I would say probably globe is kind of divided into as many parts or as many countries that we have. Though we have some specific continent-specific regulations, let's say Europe has some and US has some. Again, at the same time, you have segregations in the domains also, right? Let's take healthcare sector. They have a specific standard like HIPAA, right? Maybe other domains may not have something specific as a domain-specific certification or as a data standard that might lead to this kind of an evolution. So there are various factors that put in, but what has happened is finally people try to evolve into a model of where centralizing at one place and being able to put accountability in one location, which gives a better perspective and also better control in terms of managing it end to end, right? So instead of you dealing with 3 different people, you have it sitting at one location who is going to provide you end-to-end service. And when it is not more of my core activity, rather I would depend on somebody who is more like a experienced individual or who has much more better knowledge in that space, who does, let him do the job what he is, and let me focus on more of my core business where I have expertise on. I think that's how it basically gave the scalability more towards the SaaS side of it. So that's whole what I kind of visualize.
I see. So basically, it depends on the industry. It depends on the needs of the client that you'll be dealing with. But at the end of the day, SaaS and PaaS, and these are all experts offering software or platform as a service. That's the whole concept and idea, right? And yet again, the main concern is always security, data, whether they're in the right place, whether they're centralized or not, how much access to it is, and how much ownership of it the individuals or the client can claim. You could have claimed ownership of your software before. Now even ownership of your data is subscription based if it with certain softwares, right? So imagine if you're addressing that concern with a regulator. How would you let them be, not worried about it, or what do you recommend to them in terms of improving the data ownership and improving what individuals could expect in terms of future?
From my perspective, I think some of this, a part of this problem is already solved by the regulations that are already there, right? Because governments and industries have been majorly concerned about how the data is going to be produced or stored and discarded and other stuff. So half of the job for that has already been defined in those regulations, which are kind of driving it already. Rest of it is more driven by the domain or the certainty and also the concerns that the industries basically have, right? Let's say a big bank like JP Morgan or Wells Fargo wouldn't probably prefer to have the entire set of data sitting on a public cloud kind of a system. Rather, they would prefer to have more of like a hybrid model. One could potentially be that they are concerned about security, and the other thing they don't want to be seen as kind of an outliers if they don't want to adopt this, right? So that is where they would probably pick up a kind of a median path going through a hybrid kind of a model. I think that is how it is changing.
I see. So it's mainly the regulatory bodies that are in different areas that are shaping it rather than technology. Yes, technology is evolving, but
I mean, technology as such is probably the easiest part, I would say, because you can control it, whereas the regulatory part of it is more like you just abide to it, right? You can influence, but the influence is to the limited extent compared to the technology side of it, because which is more in your control.
I see. I see.
True. Actually, the thing is like GDPR, HIPAA, and different kinds of like certification means this kind of like security concerns, and the government bodies they are like coming forward with this kind of like we can say controls. It help us to grow more in this kind of like situation. And yes, like earlier in our kind of product, I can say that there are people afraid of that data. Means my data is coming on different platforms like public clouds. So what will happen in that on that data? But yes, right now the people are thinking on different perspective also, that what kind of flexibility, what kind of availability we have, and based on that they are coming forward, coming ahead of it, and they are like moving forward with this kind of like situation also. So that yes, in like our kind of like software as a service, our products, this will have a like huge feature in coming like near future.
So apart from the industry and geography based regulations which are already there, which is more towards the domain and the business, bodies like GDPR, and there is one thing called as CCPA, the California thing. Actually, they started putting out some regulationary standards for building SaaS. So when you build something for SaaS, as SaaS, right, you need to follow certain compliances and checklist in terms of managing data. So that is also like one thing which came up in 2018 with GDPR is something which is already there. And the first thing which is going to come out in 2021 is going to be with this CCPA, where like if you are going to build SaaS, because the craze of the number of applications which are going SaaS is very huge, right? So like these bodies are taking that into account, and California being a leader in the US market, they are trying to bring it as a state kind of a rule where they control all these SaaS platforms or subscription models, whatever is going to the users in terms of managing their data.
All right. So let's try and kind of reframe it into a real life scenario and an existing one. I'm from the background where businesses are trying to build it for themselves so that they can host others. And so let's frame it in a simple one. E-commerce is something that everybody is familiar with right now, and everybody want to have it, everyone want to do it, but when you get to big companies, they have to contact other companies as well, if they're selling something, because it's not just one brand, tens of brands. So then suddenly the question of who will host the data pops up. Is it an existing platform? Do the company create a marketplace or e-commerce, for example, to host others? I know we're talking about the software, but then there's so many layers of things being hosted, part of it on AWS, part of it on, let's say, yes, or ERP-wise. So if I want to frame it this way, imagine a company trying to do that, and in contact with the partners of that company, how would you guide this company to do it, make it, and then invite the normal users to put their data, place their purchases on their platform, and be confident of that data being safe with them, and the partners being confident of, let's say, their business being safe with them, right? How would you recommend it?
So the businesses usually start with their problem, and they just try to solve their problems first, and they try to just work with their data initially in the initial stages. And then when they expand their platform, or when they expand their software to the outside market, when they get in more outsiders data or consumers data or other data, and in that case, like they'll know like who are the users who are actually going to place their data on their servers and stores, right? And then that sets up the base for the regulations to come and play a role in terms of defining where the data has to be. So you don't need to be like too much about complicated in terms of like, it's all a regulatory standards which are already there, and which is across the domains, and it is going to come up again like for even for the implementation level as well.
So now if you want to make it a bit more complicated and still stay on data, with the big businesses, what is the biggest concerns you have seen, particular case, say with a bank, with a let's say, an oil company? What is the most rememberable example of that?
I think it's probably an extension to your previous question, right? So the question of trust is what it basically starts with. So the previous one is an interesting ideology that you brought in, because you're bringing three different sets of players onto a single platform, and then asking who should basically own that accountability, right? Like if you take an e-commerce as a platform, there's the player, whoever is creating the marketplace, and then the vendor and the consumer, right? So it's probably, and then probably an unknown player. The fourth one is basically the government or the regulator, right? Who more or less defines this. Then comes the additional questions of, what geography. Let's say, for example, the top e-commerce company like an Amazon, though they might have a global standard, then they probably come up with an element of localized version of their website where the data retention and other stuff are basically managed and adopted to be sure that they operate in that space. But then, will a shared model of accountability works, or will there is a dedicated model of accountability? A centralizing of the accountability will work. For example, there are certain countries nowadays giving you the choice. Would you like me to save the data in my systems? That's a choice. Previously, it was not a choice. Now it is kind of given as a choice for the individual to choose. So even the consumer is made as a partner for that discussion right now, which was not there. I think what I see is more of, the risk is being diversified into in all three of them. Thereby, it's up to the individuals how you wanted to leverage whatever is available. It's not kind of, unidirectional choice. Rather, it is more of a multi-choice option that is available for you, but it is more of you feel secure, you trust on the organization or the kind of an encryption standards that they leverage, and the kind of technology that they use and build on. Probably you will still go with it. You might feel less empowered when you say, like, as an individual, probably I'm not sure whether I can really take care of all this. And also some portion of ease of use, right? Let's say I don't want to probably carry all my 10 different credit cards to each and every location that I go, each and every country that I travel. Rather, it is already there on the system, and I would probably just go and use it as and when I wanted, whatever be the country that I'm operating on. So I think that is the model that is kind of coming in, where you see from a centralized responsibility to a diversified responsibility. That is what probably security is also kind of shifting into different fields, different layers rather, are making it as kind of one person's responsibility or the organization's responsibility as such.
So basically what's happening, from what I understand, is unlike before where building and development was about the technology or about the tool and utility, now you need an architect to actually diversify responsibility and decide whether it should be centralized or not, or say which existing tools or which existing services needs to be integrated, right?
Nowadays, I think the private hyperledgers are also coming in place in terms of ensuring that this trust is being transparently provided to all the players and in the entire ecosystem. Like if there are multiple people involved in the platform, and one of the use cases where we tried to solve there was like in the insurance market, health insurance market, where like you have payers, the providers, and you have the patients, and all of them involved in the same platform. And you need to diversify the data and show them that they are responsible for whatever they are actually providing to the platform, right? So that gets a chance for some of the Web 3.0 tools like Hyperledger and all that to come in to solve these kind of problems when the diversification starts.
Probably one other thought that I was kind of just running while we discuss. I see potentially there is a possibility of even that becoming a pricing model going forward. Even the security kind of is going to becoming a pricing model. Like let's say Amazon might potentially look at, or maybe any other e-commerce website can look at. See, this is the kind of a price of a security that if you want me to share me to retain your data and operate with, I'll give you this at a specified price, or rather if you don't want, probably you have a base version which you can still operate the way that you are currently doing it, right? So because it's end of the day, whether it is the individual, whether it is the business, or whether it is the provider, somebody need to put the money on the table to build that additional security system, right? Because it's a cost to the organization end of the day. You might need to put dedicated teams. You might need to continuously be ready to face the attack, and we know the kind of penalties that we get into for these kind of situations, right? So that is probably one way that you can give that trust, or you can enforce trust into the individuals, right? So maybe it's kind of an insurance that you are buying for your data, right? So if you basically put a pricing model for that, and then if your account is secured from that, like the way that you secure your life, you're securing your data as well at a premium price as such. So I think that could potentially be a model that could evolve going forward, where you could potentially honestly trust and put the data in the system. And then in case there is a loss of data, loss of your identity or something, you have a premium that you can get it back, or the price that the organization will pay for you in terms of the loss that you're going to be that you're going to incur as such, right? I don't think that's not going to be a big challenge, because that's how you see the banks doing it today, right? Because if there is a fraudulent transaction, bank basically stops that, and bank reverts the money, and they basically take care of it in the back end, however the way that it is. I don't think it is not too far for e-commerce kind of industries as well to look at protecting the data at a premium price for the consumer, making sure that they centralize the accountability of the data management, and taking it forward at one centralized location. Because individual, whoever is buying it, is potentially the last link. Though it's an important one, he wouldn't rather prefer to have these many strings attached to his transaction. He would prefer to have a very smooth and easy experience for him to operate with. I wouldn't see that consumer would hesitate to pay for those additional $1 or $2 that are needed for it. And if we are able to build solutions which can probably look at that kind of a mechanism, I think that is the future that we can give, whatever be the data model that you go on with. But the security as such could potentially come in, and then the consumer will feel happy about doing a safe transaction as such. And he will have all that backing every time in his mind. However way that I do it, I'm kind of covered. Right?
I understand.
Actually, in addition to this, we need to think about the performance part also. Like, let me tell you a simple example of our product only. Like, we have different products with us, like Consign, Compare, means insurance comparison. Then Consign is for digital signing a document. Then Concheck for the police verification. So different kinds of products we have with us. Right now, we are integrating all the products with a one single CRM ERP system that is called KONZE. So the people who are using ERP kind of system, they are facing this kind of things that, okay, what kind of database we can have? Is it a centralized or is it a distributed? Okay, what kind of security aspects we need to think? What are the things we need to think about on the performance side of it? So all these aspects, see, initial time, whenever we have started developing these applications, we didn't think about this in 2016, 17, I can say. But nowadays, yes, it is like, okay, like firing on the edge, so that we need to think about the architectural perspective. Now again, we need to think on the basics, and then we need to change the architecture, and we need to think about all these aspects, so that it will help us in a near future to have a single system with all the systems connected with each other, with the proper performance, with the proper security, with all the aspects, whatever we are thinking.
I understand. So we have about 10 minutes. Before we get into Q&A, I want to throw a curveball, so we could also talk about what might happen in future and how future aspects might be addressed. So we all arrived here, or not all, many of us through the airport, and many of us took the airport taxi. And me personally, taking the taxi, noticed that I have to go through a process and then get the cab. I cannot choose or bargain with the cab driver before getting on. That means I'm at the mercy of the meter or the taxi driver, because like I'm in the system. So suddenly I felt like, hey, I lost the bargaining power. and then check that, yes, I did, I was overcharged. The day after, I tried to use an existing taxi application, and this time it was the other way around. A taxi driver was kind of losing the bargaining power if the car was too far away from me, right? And couldn't ask me for the same amount of that he could have if we were bargaining. And then I suddenly noticed we kind of are developing something that is taking away the bargaining power of individuals, but at the same time, it's trying to facilitate that transaction that needs to happen between the people. Even with banks, that might also be the case, because yes, people want some things like data privacy and centralization of it, but then at the same time, it should be economic, right? The decisions they make, it should be, let's say, viable. I have to be able to get my car regardless of how I get it. So the driver knowing my name before getting there really doesn't matter to me. I have to give that away. And then the app tracking what I do does not matter. But here is the curveball. Before, we were worrying about the terms and conditions that we have to read before subscribing to an app, getting longer and longer. Now, maybe in the past year, we've been worrying about, let's say, what AIs are coming out to write these terms and conditions, and what AIs are coming out to read these terms and conditions. Not just that, the news is being produced this way. And then the transactions are kind of getting into where IoT is having the authority to make transactions. Web3 is happening very soon. Web3 is going to be integrated with IoT, right? So the challenge is the platform is getting stronger, platforms getting stronger, services getting stronger, and then the individuals are at the mercy of the platforms. Unless the platforms they work properly, right? So now, that curveball, my question is, if you want to recommend to someone who's joining this industry, as an intern, as someone who wants to build something new, what would you recommend them to build, or how would you recommend them to build so that that individual kind of right or individual bargaining power can remain preserved to an extent? It's a tricky question.
I would say, see, technology is always there and it's continued to evolve. For me, the perspective is always from the end consumer standpoint, right? I always believe in this concept of, look at your customer's customer, because several time we end up on building platforms or systems and we sell it to somebody, right? And then we generally don't look much beyond that. How is the real end user of that product is going to be, right? Let's say I'm an insurance product guy. I develop a system what the insurance producer or insurance agent will use, right? But the question is, what is the customer when he's having an interaction with my insurance agent is basically driving? That is what will be your driving force in terms of the technology that you should really look at. But when it comes to the question of bargaining power, right? I believe it's always kind of a kind of a sine wave, right? It takes some time. I mean, one player will take a lead, and then there will be few more people coming in, and then the consumer will get an edge, and then probably then it's kind of the continuum goes on, right? So I wouldn't suggest anybody looking at a specific technology or a platform. It's more about looking at or visualizing the needs of the business or the needs of the customer. That is what would potentially give you a long-term perspective to stay or sustain. Technologies are more to facilitate those products to evolve rather than technology is something that an individual should start looking at as a solace to start off with. If you probably look at that, your horizon is going to be shorter. If you look at the end consumer perspective in terms of what are the different needs or the kind of areas that could potentially be will be useful for the consumer in, let's say, next 20 years. If you are able to visualize the way that their day-to-day operation or day-to-day activities are transforming into, and that will give directly a type of product that you need to build. So that is what rather we should focus more on, rather than looking at whether it is cloud or whether it is some other technology that is coming in, because you can do it with cloud, and we did it without cloud also for last 50-60 years. It's just that it is helping us to do it in a better way, right? It is helping us to do it in a much faster way, right? So that's what I see it.
Now, let me add something in that. See, we can go like same thing, whatever we have implemented. It can go on module base also. So what kind of modules the customer is expecting, and based on that, the charges can be managed. So that always competition can be there, but the same competition for the same module. Okay, I am getting this module better in this particular app, or and other module like best in other app. So that kind of comparison can be there, and then customer can get advantage of those kind of like expertise on that also.
So if I understand it properly, one, if I'm joining this field and want to develop and want to prevail and at the same time be as ethical as I can be, I should make sure to get the customer in mind and end user in mind, and make sure I understand what their needs are and how they might experience the application. And at the same time, the power to select the right app actually gives the customer, as long as they have that power.
Right. If you look at the last two conversations that we had in the conference, they talked about 2-3 different technologies, but they were kind of useful across the board of domains. There is no specific domain that they said is, this is not fit for this technology, right? You can make it work. The point is, how do we basically visualize the value from that particular technology to be implemented, and probably the cost versus the revenue that you can get out of that, right? Because I was having a kind of a view when I was asking that question to Mr. I forgot the name, about the travel industry. My perspective was, the provider is going to get lost because I'm going to view the site from my home. I may not be really going that place, but he's visualizing it from a perspective of, I can visualize it as kind of an advertisement, and then I probably do a better customized package, and I probably go with the whole family as such. So the point is, technology is something that you can customize, you can basically leverage to the way that you wanted to run the business for, right? And it's about different revenue models that you can operate in that. But the idea is that how do you basically make sure that you put it in the right perspective to the customer, and you understand the customer's viewpoint, how they should leverage this, or what would really help them out in that sense. Then we can really make a good model to present, and that is where your success will basically lie.
So improving on the utility and making better tools available, but at the same time keeping the customer or the end user's experience as the value in mind.
So you were talking about the bargaining power and the negotiating power going away, right? What I would say is like a lot of apps are now just making us lose the power of selection. Like every app is giving me a recommendation, and every product is being told to me what to buy. So it is just me who has provided my preferences and experiences to the software, which is helping me out in deciding much faster. And it is more powerful is what I believe. It is not going to be something which is something taking me backward. And also, like, this is in the case of a business to consumer. Like, take the case of business to business. Many businesses are now moving towards low code and no code platforms, where like they want to host their application source code and everything, whatever they build, in the platform itself, which is again they are ready to do that, so that they gain more power to develop things faster. I don't think it is something which is going to take us
to
backward.
be concerned about. Yeah, understand.
Perfectly right. B2B and B2C are the market, simply directly like just configurable product is available, and then they can move on that.
Yeah.
True.
So I think we are really short on time, and but there might be some questions.
Yeah, we'll do the Q&A.
Yes, so if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Or any expert suggestion towards SaaS, that is also expected.
All right, so I think we can move on to the next segment, and we all will be available for the next 2 to 3 days if there are questions.
Actually, it's a lunchtime, so that.
They turned off my mic, so yes, it's lunchtime. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That was quite interesting. Any questions, though? Sure, no questions from the audience, because we do have some time for Q&A. No, everyone's hungry. All right, it's lunchtime now. It's going to be a 60-minute break, but before lunch, before we go for lunch, we have to gather at the promenade for a group photo for everyone. Only then the buffet will open. Thank you, gentlemen, for your lovely time. And if you do have any questions, you can, ask, obviously, outside during lunch or whenever you guys are free. Thank you so much.